Welcome back to the Real Texas Radio Podcast with your host, Bronin, or if you're joining the show for the first time, 1,000 welcomes. We've got an exciting show today. First, more news out of Preston Hollow, District 13. The Grinch, Donnell, Willis, with more of the war on Christmas. Plus, I'm going to talk about a story out of South Texas, Congressional District 23, which is represented by Tony Gonzalez. He is under scrutiny as the result of one of his staffers who committed suicide earlier in 2025 in a cloud of mystery. All right now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronin, just a fed-up taxpayer bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. Just when I thought that this story didn't have any more juice in it, the viral TikTok house, the Christmas decorated mansion in Preston Hollow, the exclusive Dallas neighborhood north of Highland Park. Well, it's back in the news because people have been going up to the house to try to get a look at it, to try to visit and get some photographs, and they have been stopped by a police blockade, and including Dallas and Fuego. He went up and got some video of the house on Friday, and according to him, there were 15 police cruisers. 15! Monitoring the neighborhood. And between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m., you can't go down Deloche Road where this house is located. Neither car nor pedestrian, unless you have a digital guest pass, which is, I don't know, is that kind of like a COVID hoax farce nonsense scam passport? So obviously, if you're local traffic, if you live on the street, the Dallas Police Department will let you in. But if you are a pedestrian, and I guess you don't have an address on Deloche Road, you're just a visitor, you're a foreigner from the unwashed masses, you can't even walk down the street. It's a public street. Isn't that a clear First Amendment violation?
If I were reading this shit, I wouldn't believe it.
Seems to me like that's a clear First Amendment violation. And apparently, Donnell Willis, the odious councilwoman from the district, I think we're going to have to start calling her the Grinch Donnell Willis.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel.
Well, Dallas and Fuego actually has released some new audio. This is a voicemail that Donnell Willis left for the homeowner of this TikTok house. Oh, which, by the way, the theme of the TikTok house this year is Grinch. And they decorated for Halloween. They blew onto the scene last year all over social media, 2024 Christmas. Thousands of people showed up to view. And as I think more and more people are catching on, I'll take credit for pointing this out, but a lot of the people showing up, there's a lot of diversity to the crowd. And Donnell Willis, she has claimed that people have been throwing dirty diapers and pizza boxes and empty drink containers on the lawns of her exclusive wealthy white neighborhood. And of course, one of her donors in the area, it has complained to her, and at a quality of life and culture committee meeting in the Dallas City Council back in October, Donnell Willis, she was apoplectic, giving staff orders. She wanted them to conduct like an ambient air study to see if the lights that you're emitting from your property, if there were any repercussions, that you could penalize somebody for having certain light. We're talking about Christmas lights. Talk about the war on Christmas. I wish that Bill O'Reilly, you miss him in the old days on Fox News.
War on Christmas.
He'd be all over this. He'd be all over this city councilor, I would say. You know what? Maybe I got to drop a dime to Bill O'Reilly. He's not quite the staple he once was. But anyway, this is Gay Donnell Willis. She's leaving a voicemail here for the homeowner, the offender. And you know what my first thought was? I'm going to play the cut, but how many minions are there running around the city of Dallas between code enforcement and aides and any other number of people? Don't you think you'd want to have your minions handling this kind of a thing? But here she is, Grinch Donnell Willis, District 13.
Good morning. This is Gay Donnell Willis. I'm the City Council representative for District 13. I'm trying to reach Mandy, the homeowner of 6215 Deloach. As you know, your Christmas light display, holiday light display is creating a tremendous nuisance for the neighborhood with regard to traffic and people running across Preston Road and parking illegally. Not to mention the fact that the display is in violation of a couple of aspects of code. So I wanted to visit with you.
And let me pause there for a couple things. That music, this was added by Dallas and Fuego. This is Dallas and Fuego's scoop. So good job, Dallas and Fuego. But first, I just want to point out, so she's blaming the neighbor who's decorated his house, or the family who's decorated their house for Christmas. He's blaming them for other people illegally parking on another street, Preston Road, which Deloach intersects. So, first of all, that's ridiculous. But let's keep going here. We got about another 45 seconds to this cut, and hopefully you can hear it, even with the music here, which obviously was not added by Gay Donnell Willis herself.
About making sure you're aware of these concerns. I've heard that people have made you aware, and the Neighborhood Association has made you aware. But I wanted to visit with you because I'm prepared to do whatever it is within the power of the city to make sure that we bring safety back. I'm at a point where I'm having to ask DPD, our Dallas police, to manage a holiday light situation versus being on the street to take care of criminals not hurting our public, and that just seems like priorities out of whack. So I would ask that you all take that into consideration for your neighbors and for the residents of the whole city, and give thought about how you can come into compliance right away and be thoughtful neighbors in this holiday season. So this is myself.
I'll pause it right there, but Gay Donnell Willis, she has warned that she is going to do everything within her power as a city councilor to get this house into compliance, because it's a threat to public safety. It's a threat to public safety, she says. I actually went and visited the house last year, and there were cars allowed down the street at that point. They were crawling. It was mostly at a standstill. So there was no public safety threat. There were no fights. There was no brawling. Sure, maybe if you want to argue that having no sidewalks on Preston Road and having no crosswalks or traffic lights, if you want to argue that you have a threat to public safety there, I'm certainly in agreement. But I don't think they want sidewalks and crosswalks and other pedestrian-friendly amenities in Preston Hollow. I think they prefer their exclusivity, if you catch my drift. You know, will we be getting a comment from Gay Donnell Willis's fellow City Hall cabal member, Adam Basildua, council member District 7? You know, he is very concerned about diversity. In fact, he just tweeted out a picture of himself self-identifying as a DEI hire and wearing an ugly Christmas sweater in green, in Grinch colors. So maybe he is in support of his colleague here rather than the residents. But, you know, I would think that Adam Basildua would want to get a comment on how unfair it seems that this north of I-30 wealthy mansion neighborhood is not celebrating diversity, and it's not opening its arms to embrace all of the Dallas residents, those of us who aren't fortunate enough to be able to own $6 to $8 million mansions. Any comment from Adam Basildua?
Okay, where are you from, sir? I don't see how that's relevant to the specific of a...
Yeah, remember when Adam Basildua asked the black ICE agent a few city council meetings ago where he was from, which I thought that was a Democrat hate crime, to ask somebody where they're from. I thought that was the worst thing you could do, make somebody feel as if they are others. And any other comment from Adam Basildua on the unwashed masses who are just trying to visit Preston Hollow and take a picture with their families outside of the TikTok house?
That there have been agitators in large far-right agitators that...
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. That's what they think of people, just trying to celebrate a little Christmas cheer. So while we're on the subject of Adam Basildua, very briefly, last week in the Dallas Morning News appeared an opinion piece that was in support of a corporate merger of two rail lines. And very oddly, the author is allegedly Adam Basildua. And I first saw the article, and I saw who the alleged author was, Adam Basildua. And it's called What a Unified Rail Network Could Mean for Dallas's Future. And immediately, before I clicked on the article, I assumed that it was going to be Baz promoting high-speed rail between Dallas and Houston, or among the triangle here in Texas. We know that Adam Basildua, he's such a fan of traveling to Japan on the taxpayer dime for a vacation. Economic development opportunities. And Japan is obviously well known for its high-speed rail. So I assumed that was going to be the focus of the article, but no, instead it's about supporting the proposed merger between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern rail lines. And there is speculation among the right-wing agitators, so-called, that a lobbyist just gave this to Adam Basildua for him to slap his name on it and get it published in the Dallas Morning News, because it's off-brand in one sense for Baz. There's not a diversity celebrating element to this article, so that doesn't really make sense. But then on the other hand, we know that Baz, he's a huge hack for special interests and lobbyists. Just let me point you to the digital kiosks, 100 to 150 of which are going to be established all over the city of Dallas. I don't think too many in his District 7, but in District 14, my district, District 2 probably, other places as well, we're going to be getting these digital kiosks, which the lobbyists claim they spent 4.5 years trying to get passed by the Dallas City Council, just passed at their last meeting earlier this month. And the biggest cheerleader for this lobbying project was none other than Adam Basildua. So the article itself in the Dallas Morning News was not very interesting. But there was a comment beneath the article, and the Dallas Morning News doesn't get a whole lot of commenters on most of its articles, but this person named Jim, he made a very interesting comment that I'll go ahead and just share with you. It's been making the rounds on social media. There's a huge 24-track Union Pacific switchyard that runs the entire length of the Joppa community in D7. Joppa, which we sometimes hear Baz touting as a wonderfully diverse community, is also a historically marginalized, a historically disadvantaged community, you might say. So they've got this huge Union Pacific switchyard running through it, which is a common theme in lower income, marginalized communities. They've got undesirable infrastructure running through. So Jim continues. There's a very real threat of derailments and hazardous materials accidents, and the locomotives Union Pacific uses there are among the oldest and most polluting in their fleet, dumping thousands of pounds of air pollution into Joppa every year and impacting every resident's health. Despite this, the city council member for the area has never once remarked on these dangers or advocated moving the switchyard. But he found time to sign off on this Union Pacific PR puff piece in favor of the railroad's big business mega merger. Such a tool. Well, of course. I mean, Baz, he's got to spread himself around to these lobbyists, because I would say that his political career, his elected political career, is about to go on ice after the conclusion of his tenure on the Dallas City Council. I don't see him going to the state level, in the state legislature, for example, for any number of reasons. Number one, too unpopular. He wouldn't be able to build enough of a base to get into the office. But probably even worse from his perspective is the pay, a measly, paltry, under $10,000 a year. I think these state legislators in Texas are earning for a part-time legislature. Most of them are lawyers, so they're subsisting primarily from their law firms. And he's not getting into the Congress. He's not got enough of a base, although he'd love the salary, $175,000 a year, plus all the other perks. So I guess he's going to have to go the way of Adam Medrano, former city councilor, who is also entrenched in this digital kiosk lobbying gross fiasco that I hope is investigated. So maybe Baz thinks he'll get on the Union Pacific roster. They'll shell him. They can certainly match him $60,000 if he can get this over the line. Although I don't know what the hell the city really has anything to do with this, but oh well. All right, one more question for Adam Basildua before we move off of this topic. I want to talk about something else. How long are you riding with the Union Pacific lobbyists? I couldn't help myself. I'm a Judy Garland fan, especially around Christmas. Meet me in St. Louis. All right. So I want to talk about the Harris County judge race. And actually, it's a very crowded primary field because, as you know, it's an open seat. The mental patient, loony bin, Lena Hidalgo, she is not running for a third term. She's had a tough year, from publicly breaking down at commissioners' court meetings, losing embarrassing votes to raise property taxes for Harris County residents. She's also announced a split from her husband, oddly, on the 1-year anniversary of their marriage. She posted on Instagram that they were splitting up. This is a guy who doled out the bulk of his savings, a lawyer, Stanford-educated lawyer, to pay, allegedly, for her mental patient stay a couple of years ago in Ohio and New York. So now we have an open seat. We've got a crowded field of Democrats and Republicans. There are more Republicans running for the Harris County seat, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm very familiar with who these people are. One of them is a Chinese immigrant mayor of a small town in Harris County. I suppose she had to resign because of Texas's resign to run law. I don't know how she's going to fare. I would say probably the candidate with the best recognition for the county judge race in Harris County is Anise Parker.
You ain't talking about me, guys. When it says county judge, you ain't talking about this county judge. No.
Shut up. COVID Clay. Shut up. It's bad enough we have to deal with you here in Dallas County. You COVID perpetrating PPP loan freak from Highland Park, ambulance chaser. Don't get me started. But Anise Parker, she is 69 years old. She's a former mayor of Houston, and she was also a city councilor for a number of years from Houston. And she's also a lesbian, not that anything wrong with that.
And works for a gay CIA Fed.
No, I didn't say that. We don't have any evidence of that. But she is running for county judge. She announced over the summer, and she's being challenged by a Muslim dentist from Boston, a former city councilor at large from Houston. Again, she had to resign to run, and she's been in Texas for a long time. And she is trying to claim to fame by reducing police involvement in Houston from cooperating with ICE. So we'll see how far that gets her. Anise Parker, she's allegedly, according to the Houston Chronicle, a fiscally conservative Democrat. You know, there are so many of those floating around.
Sure, Jan.
We got a lot of lesbians, white lesbians, in elected politics in Texas. Apparently, Anise Parker, she was the first big city openly gay mayor. And then we've got Kim Ogg. She was the DA of Harris County. She used to be backed significantly by George Soros money, but he turned on her because she went kind of Republican and got friendly with Ken Paxton, so she's out. And George Soros funded another candidate who won, Sean Tare, for the DA position. And then, of course, we got Julie Johnson here, the Congresswoman from the Dallas area. She's now challenging Colin Allred. So we got a lot of lesbians in Texas in elected politics. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Just wanted to point that out. So I'm very curious about the county judge race in Harris County, third largest county in the United States. It's a big job, and it's been really sullied and tarnished, helmed by feckless mental patient, lunatic, Dora the Explorer, Lena Hidalgo. What a terrible mess she's made of things. And she's just a total embarrassment to the state, you know, at Columbia National. She'll be gone soon. Back to the nut house, perhaps. All right, and this is probably the last story that I'm going to cover for 2025. Representative Tony Gonzalez. He is representing District 23 in the U.S. House of Representatives, which is a district that borders Mexico on the very southern border of Texas. It stretches from San Antonio nearly all the way up to Odessa. And I believe it also includes Uvalde, you know, where that horrific school shooting occurred a number of years ago. But very strange story. Back in September of this year, one of Representative Tony Gonzalez's staffers, the regional district director, and I think for Uvalde, and I think she lived in Uvalde, she committed suicide. I believe that's the ruling that the medical examiner published. Committed suicide by setting herself on fire, dousing herself with gasoline and setting herself on fire in her backyard in South Texas. Wild. And then the Daily Mail reported shortly thereafter that this woman, the regional district director for Tony Gonzalez, who is a MAGA Republican, by the way, he just won Donald Trump's endorsement, that the two were having an affair. Now, the congressman, to his part, he vigorously denies the affair. And in fact, we have this is pretty recent sound. This is the first time that Gonzalez is speaking on the record. I think he was speaking to the Texas Tribune. He is facing a primary challenge, which I'll talk about in a moment. But here's Rep. Tony Gonzalez commenting on the rumors of the affair.
testing of these outlets. I'm waiting for a final report. I think that would make a lot of sense. But I would like everyone to remember Regina for all the wonderful things that she did for our community.
Yeah, so he's on the record now denying the affair, and he's married. I think he's got 5 or 6 kids. He is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, and this woman, the regional director, I believe she was separated from her husband, and she had 1 young child. Her mother allegedly found her in the backyard, and apparently the 911 calls, they have been sealed, and apparently there was video. I don't know video of what. That has all been sealed. But the local media in Texas, they have been trying to get the 911 calls unsealed unsuccessfully. Now you got to keep in mind this is a MAGA Republican congressman. So would these outlets that seem to actually be doing real journalism on this story be so enthusiastic about covering the story if it were a Democrat? I don't know. But the interesting thing about this District 23 in South Texas, it's pretty solidly red. I think in the presidential election in 2016, it went for Hillary Clinton. But going back to at least 2008, this is a very red district. It is over 60% Hispanic. It's under 25% white. But it's a very reliably red district. Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, John Cornyn, they've all won this congressional district. But I was doing a little bit of digging into suicide by fire. And do you know how many people in the United States, and I think these stats, they also included Europe and Canada as well. But let's stick to the United States. How many people in this country who commit suicide, what is the percentage of them that commit suicide by setting themselves on fire? And by the way, I've seen stories where the death has been reported in the passive voice, like she caught fire, this woman, versus she set herself on fire. Although most recently I'm reading the piece with the gasoline, that she doused herself in gasoline. Fewer than 1% of suicide deaths in this country are by fire. What a horrific way to end your life. And I mean, I imagine you probably just go into shock quickly. But we've seen those people set on fire in the trains by homeless, junkie bum, criminal, vagrant, mental patient, ne'er-do-well, recidivist reprobates. It just looks horrible. And we know, obviously, firearm, that's one of the more common ways to commit suicide. Half of gun deaths in the United States are suicides, which anti-2A people, they don't like anybody to acknowledge that. They like you to think that all death by gun is homicide, when that's not the case. But it's just a really strange story. Apparently, this woman, she was flown to whatever the nearest hospital was. But just an awful story. And I don't know. It seems like this Tony Gonzalez guy, he's been in the Congress just since 2021. He's fairly new. And in the last cycle, he faced a challenger, I think a guy named Brennan Herrera, another Hispanic guy. He's a YouTuber, apparently. He's very pro-gun. If you see his media, if you look at his images and all of his promotion, he's usually holding like a huge firearm. Sorry, I'm not a big gun guy, supporter of the 2A, but I don't own a firearm myself. Bit of an expensive hobby at this point in my life, but apparently I don't know how nervous Tony Gonzalez is with this challenger, but the challenger, he's not that poorly funded. I think he's got over $1 million. So again, March 3rd in Texas, it's going to be very interesting primary season, and a lot of races around the state, very interesting. There's expected to be shakeups and upsets, and not just with Jasmine Crockett, her campaign has launched like a lead balloon. And The Hill, they kind of wrote a hit piece on her, and Drudge picked it up. Just, even if she wins the primary, which is quite possible, against James Tallarico, in all likelihood, James Tallarico is the more centrist candidate who probably has a better shot statewide in a general election. But I think they're both going down one way or another, Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. And I'm here for it. I'm here to watch. I'm here to enjoy the chaos, the bedlam, the maelstrom. All right. Well, I'm going to end on that note. Once again, Merry Christmas from the Real Texas Radio Podcast. Happy New Year. And if you are just joining the Real Texas Radio Podcast over the last few months, I've got a big back catalog, so catch up, download those episodes. Follow me on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin, and I will catch you in 2026.